All right, this is No Excuses with Michael DiLeonardo. I'm your host, RJ Roger. Michael, how you doing?
Very good. Thank you, RJ. And you and your
Yep.
family? Everybody
Oh,
good?
everybody's good. Everything's great. I'm excited for this show because it's something I always wanted to talk about. Can you tell everybody today to subscribe to the channel? They might listen to you more than me.
I don't know. I think you got more influence. But it would be nice to join our team. It would be nice.
Please subscribe, guys. Support the channel. Share the channel. Talk with your friends about it. You know, the more you spread the word, you know, that's how you can help us. That's how you can be of support to us.
Yeah, and RJ, I'm going to give my perspective on things. I'm not saying what I say is absolute. That's for other people to judge. That's why they come on these programs and they read these books and watch all these shows. I'll give my opinion, my angle to it, and I want everybody else to decide and give us your opinions. I could take a hit. I could take criticism, and fact check us all the time, please.
Very true. So, Michael, what I want to talk about today, this is common theory that's widely believed, especially by law enforcement, but you even have, people who are interested in mob history. You know, John Gotti is largely viewed contemporary as being the guy that severely weakened the mob. That some will go as far as saying John Gotti is the person who brought down the Gambino family, brought down the mob as a whole. And the three things that is commonly cited, the high profile hit on Big Paul Castellano, that it was just too public. It was too much. It brought too much public interest. Number two, that Gotti just himself was too public, that he sought out the media. He was a media hound that put too much spotlight on the mob. And then number three is his mandating all his captains to show up every day. They knew the FBI was outside. They knew they were watching the Ravenite, but yet still he was having everybody come down every week to meet with him, give him updates. So my question to you, how would you respond to that? How would you respond to, and we can go through each one of those one by one.
On a contemporary issue, yeah, there's some truth to that. But let's not take what John did. We need to go way back in time to say John did nothing different than a lot of other people in time, in the past, that brought focus and focal point onto the mob. There was many hearings about the mob. There was many sensational hits that happened in the mob. There was many guys who had social clubs forever, 100 years. It had 50, 60, 70 guys there. And I was there on a Sunday by Paul Castellano's club in the 80s, 70s and 80s, that there was 60, 80 guys there on a Sunday. They come from all over. So, it's a misconception about John. John gets a lot of blame for all of that. But I would really like to walk through and see if I could shine some light on things that happened in the past that John did not do anything differently. The only critique I could make about John in that was that John knew the press was out there. And that's the only thing that really hurt John in the press, in the world, not the FBI. With or without press, the FBI was going to be on that club and any place that John went, like any other boss that was high profile. There was a lot of bosses that were high profile. The Pershicos were high profile. Paul Castellano was high profile. Pick a boss. Pick a boss that didn't have 30, 40, 50 guys a day in the club years ago. They all had it. John's mistake was, in my eyes, was he should have backed it up. He should have stopped a lot of those meetings, the Raven Eye and the Bergen and stuff like that at that time when he knew the press was all over. But I'll give my opinion on that also. John figured he was thrust into the spotlight. There's been comments about saying, my public. It's true. He said it. I was there. It's my public. John's thing was, if you can't beat him, join him type mentality was, we're out there ready. This is no secret no more. It's not that he went out and says, hey, look at me, I'm John Gotti, Cosa Nostra. He went out there and he smiled. He wore nice clothes. You think John Gotti's the only guy who wore a suit that was expensive? Ridiculous. Maybe in 1920, a suit was $250, $2,500 today, right? Or then, I should say. Maybe Brioni's right now $3,000 to $5,000 for a Brioni. So maybe John would be maybe say $5,000 suits right now. But he did nothing differently than anybody else. Like I said, the only mistake I could say he made was not tamping it down. But I understand what he did. He wanted to brace so he could poison, or I should say poison, try to embrace a jury pool, a future jury pool that would feel something towards John, that he was a human being. He had fireworks shows. He came out of the club smiling. He took walk talks. He was right out in the open. He wasn't hiding. When he got arrested, did he hide his head in a jacket like they used to do years ago? And they used to hide their faces like they were child molesters, like they're really embarrassed. No, a lot of guys walk with their heads up. Not only John, plenty of people go look at film. But John put his head up, and he wanted everybody to put their heads up. John didn't care if there was 100 agents outside after a while, because it wasn't going to take from him. He's still going to have those agents all over him. So he decided to face the
yeah. You know, I read before somewhere, I believe it was in one of the places I read, it was in Sammy's book, and he talked about how a discussion with John where when John said, I'll teach you how to beat cases. We're not going to run and duck our heads. We're not going to be like Tony Ducks and walk around with a fucking sweater vest. Like what he said he said that, and walk around and look like some old man, some broken down old man. He said, when people go to the circus, they're not there to see the monkeys. They come to see the lions. They want to see us put our silks on, put our jewelry on, and Sammy. Now I'm just kind of encapsulating what the point he was making in his book, but he had a section about that when he said John believed, I'm proud of what I am. I'm not ashamed of what I am.
And Sammy's right. I heard John say that because he said it to me and others. I'll show you, Michael. I'll show you how to beat cases. And to myself, I wondered of what does he mean by that? Is it this public persona, or they were getting to jurors, which I know that was happening at times. It was common practice to try to get to jurors at times. But my take on was, let's go out there and embrace this at that point, which, I really didn't like it. I was walking with Jackie Nose one time, and we were coming up the block, walking to the Raven Knight on the other side of the street, and I just looked at everybody outside, and who's sitting right in front? An agent named Mark Roberts, tall guy. And he goes, hey, Mike, hey, Jackie. Now we're walking. I'm looking across the street. I even see the guy sitting, parked in the car right in front of a couple of cars off the Raven Knight. And we walk past and we get to the corner, and I go, Jack, this is lambs to slaughter. And, it was one of my times that I slipped, that I expressed what was in my mind. And if it wasn't Jackie, maybe that would have got back to John. And he might have been mad at me. He might have bristled at that. But it was Jackie, and, he held it in. He knew. He knew also. But this was John. This is the way he wanted to tackle this right now. He wanted to embrace it. Who's to say that being undercover would have kept him out of prison? Who's to say he wouldn't have got caught on tape? When you want to talk about guys getting caught on tape, it leads me back to where I want to discuss about who really took down the mob. There wasn't one thing. It wasn't one thing that took down the mob. It was multiple things, going back decades before John. And I hope we can discuss that right now. There's some of the things we went over previously, and we're going to lay out for the people. Just to be redundant, the one thing, keep in mind, everybody, the one thing that John did was something like Al Capone. Al Capone didn't want all that press, but he embraced it after a while. still went to jail, still came home and died of an illness. But still, what they did to Al Capone, they did to John Gotti. And it could have been any other boss at that time. Make no mistake. Just that maybe the other guys, like I said, wouldn't embrace that. They would have went undercover.
Not to veer too much, but I remember I read somewhere that Chin Gigante, at the end of his, after he was in jail and towards the end of his life, I forget where the information came out from, but information came out that he had said somewhere that he regretted the way he conducted himself as boss. Like, because he never really embraced when you walk around slobbering on yourself and you're wearing a robe and you're acting like he hid away a lot. He didn't really, so when you go to prison anyway and you die anyway, I sometimes, at least you can say, at least have some kind of reflection on the life that you lived. But all those years that he had to walk around like a crazy man, it's just like you were probably more in prison then than you were even when you were in jail. So I look at someone like John, it's enough John Gotti quotes that's out there. I will always believe this. John knew that the likely fate for him was what it was. You're going to die in the street, or you're going to die in jail. That's the reality that can come. I heard Junior say that he would, my dad would look at guys saving money and say, what's he got planned? We're all going to jail. So I sometimes wonder if he just put his chest out to the media and everyone and said, hey, I'm just going to enjoy the ride.
Now, going back to Chid's quote, if he did say that, I don't know where it would come from, unless it came out of his mouth to somebody else's ears that he wanted to write it down. I don't know. But if let's take it that he said that. And he did have that regret, right? Sitting in jail, that he shouldn't have acted that way. Go to the polar opposite. John, you think maybe he had that regret? He may have had it. In hindsight, we don't know. John very rarely would give in. He gave me something. He gave me something one day before he got arrested. He gave me a little something. And well, maybe I'll say it. But you don't think John said I shouldn't have talked to that apartment? At least one thing he regretted? You don't think John became a creature of habit? You know how I know he said that? Because he told me that.
Wow.
That's the set I'm going to give you. He told me two things. We were out one night, and he said, Michael, if I ever get caught talking on tape like Paul Castellano, I throw myself off a fucking bridge. Right? What did John do? Got caught talking on tape, big time. He became that creature of habit. And that comment came to me from him weeks to a month before he got arrested in 90. He said, Michael, he looked at me, with just him and I. He said, Michael, don't ever become a creature of habit. I became a creature of habit. And I seen it on his face. So he gave me something. He gave me a concession that he made a mistake.
A creature of habit in what regard, though?
That apartment and everything that he might have been doing at the time. The apartment, for sure. He knew he was getting arrested.
You think he knew?
Oh, I know he knew. Oh, yeah. I was in Florida. I left Thanksgiving of 90. I drove to Florida. I got there Friday sometime, right? I was in my hotel room Saturday night. The phones keeps ringing, messages. I was out playing Disneyland, right? Looking at Ghostbusters with the kid, Michael. And it's Jackie. I say, hey, Jack, what's up? What are you doing? What are you doing? I said, what am I doing? I'm in Disneyland. What am I doing? Yeah. He goes, you got to come back. I said, what do you mean I got to come back? He says, he wants to see you. I just got here. He says, no, you got to come back. You remember what we talked about? He says, yeah, he wants you here. I said, God damn it. Got in the car, right? I drove all the way to New York, dropped off my family, went to the club on a Sunday night. I walk in, he's playing cards with a big smile with a guinea stinker in his mouth. He goes, hey, I thought you were in Florida. What are you doing here? I said, I came back to say hello. I miss you guys. something to that effect, you know. And I went inside. He knew he was getting arrested. Jackie told me later on he wanted some guys around that he was concerned about and liked before he got arrested.
Wow.
4 weeks later, and he was arrested in December. So he knew he was getting arrested. So he started to see reality. His son probably knows a lot of what I'm talking about. He probably had some talks with him because he told me he did. He had his father had some talks with Junior about the life and what was going on. He didn't disclose what he talked to him about to me, but he said his father just started talking to him about a lot of things.
I know we're veering a little bit, but I want to ask this next question because I studied a lot of gangsters in my life. John Gotti was extremely intelligent. By a lot of guys I've studied, I don't care what no one says about Gotti. John Gotti, you can call him a lot of things. You can't call him dumb.
Or a punk.
Or a punk. But if I live 100 years, I'll never find the answer. What would make John Gotti talk in an apartment above the social club? That close to the social, that's the thing I always wondered. You're right upstairs. You've seen quack busted on the phone.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you. You can't compare John's rationing, reasoning to Angelo Ruggiero. And again, the man's dead. His son was a very good friend of mine. He's got another son's a really good guy. Johnny Boy passed away. I don't want to disparage the man, but the intelligence-wise, common sense, in different categories. So don't even compare Angelo and there, please.
I don't mean comparing it. I mean he saw how you can get caught talking, is what I'm saying. He's seen a lot of examples. That's what I mean. Big Paul had gotten, it's just his house got bugged. And I would just think you're so close to the hangout spot. I always wonder, why would he talk that close? Right there, upstairs.
Well, it wasn't just John. You touched on something with Paul. Now, we're not going to go by just soldiers. Let's talk about bosses. Forget everybody else. A lot of guys got caught talking on tape, right? But they weren't in that level of intelligence and power and strength and know better and to teach their family, their children and the family how to behave and how to act, right?
Yeah.
You ever hear a guy named Tony Ducks Corralo? Sal Avellino? Tony Salerno? Jerry Langella?
Mm-hmm.
Paul? Who else got caught? Ralphie Scopo? That leads us to the commission case. John should have learned that lesson. John got caught on tape with the Carpenters case. Well, didn't he? He was caught on tape in the Bergen, I think it was, those tapes. It's the creature of habit thing. It's when you start relaxing. When you start saying, I'm cuffed. How did Fat Tony? This guy was a legend. There's nothing Fat Tony did wrong in his whole life. I'm not talking about being a criminal. As a criminal, I'm talking about. He did nothing wrong. Guy's one of the most powerful guys in the country.
Yeah.
Never mind in Harlem. He made one mistake. Same mistake John did. And he's brilliant. He's one of the richest guys in the country at that time. In all walks of life. He got caught talking in the club. And who was he talking to? I think it was Tony Ducks, besides other guys. He sat in that club and talked and talked and talked. And what word did he mention? Commission.
Yeah.
What Tony Ducks do? He sat in a Jaguar. He talked about everything. Him and Sally Avellino, captain, a very smart guy. I think Sally may still be alive. But these guys were brilliant, millionaires. They talk in the same car. How do you talk? What word did he mention? Commission.
Yeah.
Paul had talk about having captains. Every Saturday, captains had to be at his house. I know I drove Lilo there, or I dropped him off on Bath Avenue, and Paulie Zach took him up to see Paul. Every Saturday. Like that's when I got the little box of cookies and the pastries. I give him $100 bill and he give me cookies, and we talk a little bit. So I mean, we could keep going. We could make a list. I don't think we have to though. A lot of people who watch this watched a lot of shows in the past. Know these people got caught. So that's part of what John gets blamed for. But these guys did it before. They got 100 years. They died in jail from their mouths. Guys who have never made a mistake. They made the mistake of being comfortable and talking in a place and ruin their lives and people in their family. Not personal family, but that's the other way to ruin your life. But in the crime family, they took down a lot of things. They got a lot of information. Same thing with John. But these happened prior. So taking down of the mob, destroying the mob was not John Gotti. He hurt the Gambino family. Sammy Guerrero was created from that. And it led to other people in other families getting hurt by Sammy and John's tapes. But they had Paul's tapes and really never got released. If Paul don't get killed, all those tapes are public record by now because he was on trial. And those tapes were devastating. And how I know, Zach came to me one time when he found out about the tapes. When they put me on the murder, Paul was in the house telling Paul that I was going to be on that hit. Zach came to me, Smike, we're in trouble. They had to have this on tape. He says, we talk as cryptic as possible, but it may come back to us. What are you going to do? It comes back to us. What are you going to do? But with Paul dying, for some reason, I never heard the tapes. I don't know if they were released. But then we could go back in time. Let's go back this way instead of starting from the beginning. Let's go back if we could do it that way. Let's go backwards.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about Paul. Like, how did Paul, like, if you could even just start at the veterans and friends, like, how did Paul do business? Like, how did he run his day-to-day operation?
When he first opened the club, 76, I believe, after Carl died. He may have it a little bit open before that, but like I showed you, that card was our corporation for social club. That was ours, my family's. Paul, we was there Mondays, Thursdays, and Sundays. And Thursdays were Thursday night. He would come about 5 o'clock. They would have dinner in Tomaso's next door. We'd come. The guys, the Jimmy Browns and the rest of the Paulie Zach and some other, even Sammy used to jump in there and play pinochle. Really high stakes games. Really high stakes. Very interesting. Pinocchle's a great game in the mind. So these guys were there. But Paul was there. 50, 60 guys. Sunday, 50, 60, 70, 80 guys. The Tomaso's, they had the whole restaurant and back room. He had to build another room, Tomaso. Serious. He had built another room. That's how off he got. So, and everybody came. You got Spero, right? Spero's been around forever. Spero had every day. Now, guys didn't go there with suits and ties. It was a hangout, neighborhood hangout place. But every wise guy that wanted to make an appointment, if they couldn't find somebody, will go to Spero's. They'll find somebody in one of the families to get a message to get to the guy they're looking for, because there was 50, 60 guys a day. Double parked cars. The precinct was 3 blocks away, 4 blocks away, right? So what was missing? The press. They had a full crap table in the back. We used to play craps. And a crap game back there. And everybody was there. The only thing missing was the press. Yeah, Paul's club. And you had a lot of other guys in the neighborhood who had clubs. With a lot of guys hanging out, 20, 30 a day in these clubs, each family. So this is a misnomer, a misrepresentation of John had everybody go there. Now, other guys had captains show up too.
Now, when he started doing business in the White House, his big mansion, he pretty much followed suit, right? He was doing the same stuff there when he was having meetings at the table.
Yeah, 100%.
Guys were coming there every week also.
Oh, 100%. And having conversations. Yeah. With the girl that makes the toast. She probably heard most of these things anyway. So, yeah, but he had that. And other guys, what, Chin didn't have anybody at the club? He walked around the bathrobe, didn't he? How many skippers were there? They got plenty of surveillance photos of Chin in front of the club on Sullivan Street.
Yeah.
So, was the press in front of Chin's club every day? No, it was FBI there. John was thrust up. They built him up, the press, to take him down. Go back to Elizabeth Street in the 1900s, 1920s. My father used to tell me stories all the time. Luciano was there. Every boss used to come on Elizabeth Street, all the Sicilian guys. Elizabeth Street was all Sicilian. And they would all come there. Again, absent press. And they didn't have the attention of the FBI they have today, of course. But there was an Italian squad going back. Petrosino was the Italian squad. These guys still hung out. The Roberts, the pastry shop, was there, I think, from 1903 or 5 or something like that. They hung out there till it was all over, till there was nobody around anymore. Well, again, I can go example after example. It's going to be redundant and get annoying after a while. But my point is the exposure of the mob, the takedown of the mob. There is no, first of all, the mob's still there. It didn't get taken down. It's just morphed into a little different thing. But go before that. Go before the commission case, which was a disaster. It was a disaster. Press-wise, it was a disaster. I don't know how everybody forgets the commission case. So go before that. What was there? Joe Bonanno's book. What year did that come out? Was that early 80s? I don't know. I never read the book. What was it?
Oh,
82, 83, 1, where was it?
Yeah, the book came out, I forget the exact year, but it was, but that book, as you know, well, you talked about it before, what that book created. But that was far before that was far before Paul, that was before Gotti was even on, people knew who Gotti was. And like we talked about before, I mean, he's sitting on a nationally televised interview, talking to one of the biggest reporters in the country, Mike Wallace, talking about the commission, talking about Lucky Luciano, writing a book with details as to how wars were fought and how wars were won. That's one of the things that Tony Ducks talked about in the back of the car with Sal Alvalino. He said, they were steaming the families was steaming at Joe. I think you said in one of our previous shows, you still can't believe that they never tried to clip him but Tony Duck said that Joe Bonano admitted that there was a commission, that he mentioned live on air that he was the father of a family. So
yeah, what's the irony in that? He admitted in a Jaguar that there's a commission a couple of times, and in a social club. So he didn't learn by Bonanno's mistakes either. So
there you go.
That book was a disaster.
Yeah,
and that book, and you don't have to go by me. It's what Giuliani did with Blakely with the RICO statute, which was created somewhere in the early 70s. How they wanted to use that as a tool against the mob, a devastating tool that does not go away. It is still here. And if the RICO law was created, right? And just before the Bonanno book, I think there's somewhere in the mid 70s, maybe, or earlier 70s. The FBI had no presence really.
Yeah.
For organized crime. They started coming around in the 60s again, but they had no structure, so to say. They put that squad, those 5 squads, like the Gambino squad was the C-16 squad. They designated X amount of agents to focus on each family, where they attacked each family individually in concert, that they weren't crossing each other or just jumping on guy to guy. They had specifics. Certain agents had certain targets in each family. The government, what they did was a stake in the heart to street guys. Because once you're in their radar, in their you're in their microscope in their radar, you're not going anywhere. They're going to get you. They had untold money at that time. So when they created the 5 squads, on each family and designated agents to certain targets in that family, you could never win with the resources they had to go after organized crime. So I missed that earlier. It came to me just now. Maybe it was the vodka, but it came back into my head. And that was a really important part of hurting the mob. How focused the FBI was on different people. And that's what led to the commission case. Each agency in each squad, they put together all these little things. They were putting together these tapes. When they got together, they started talking about, hey, this guy mentioned commission, this guy mentioned commission. And the agents from these squads, they put together that case. So the targetedness and the way they went after them, it was a huge part of the demise. So, between that law, Joe Bonanno's book, the commission case, Paul's house, the Dux's club, Dux's car, Fat Tony's club, John Gotti. It's just degrading of what happened. There was the exposure world. There wasn't the underworld anymore. It's all been outed. They've been made. How'd they start making all these movies? Go back to Valachi. Let's go. There was a hearing before. Wasn't there a hearing after Valachi?
Yeah, Kefauver hearings, the McClellan committee, they all were.
Who was in? They had plenty of videotape. Joe Gallo. There was a lot of other guys.
Frank Costello was tested.
Oh, that was earlier. That was in the 50s, I think.
Yeah, but that's how far this stuff has been going on a long time ago. Yeah.
We have a hearing in the 50s, right? This is before Albert gets clipped, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about that too. But think about the hearing in the 50s. Albert's sensational hit, right? Wide attention, just like the Paul hit. Same thing, Manhattan, busy district, right in front of patrons, middle in the afternoon. Then you got Valachi. Then you got more hearings. What hearings were they called?
Kefauver was the last. I think the Kefauver were the last major hearings where they really. I mean, a lot didn't come from it except more attention. So
that's the thing. That's the point, RJ.
Yeah,
it's not what really comes out of it.
Yeah,
they were ready. My point is, the government and the public were already in tuned to what the word mafia was. They were making movies about it.
Yeah,
they were making all kinds. They made the movie about the Valachi papers, about Joe Valachi. But you had the hearings in the 50s. You had Albert's sensational hit, and you had Valachi flipping, Dog and Pony Show. The government put him right up and talked to the world about what a wise guy is, what this guy is, who's a boss, who's not a boss, and structure going back to the 20s. So it was no secret. Then you get more hearings. That's public. Joe Gallo testified with his black sunglasses. You can't see it. Everybody's smoking. A different world then, I guess. And then you have all the other stuff we just talked about. So John Gotti didn't take this down. He didn't take the
and there were major public hits that hit the headlines just as much as the Big Paul hit there, like we talked about. The hit on Adam Bertos, the hit on Carmine Galante. These were the hit on Albert Anastasia. These were big media attention hits. Public hits done right in the front of I mean, I think wasn't Albert hit in like Midtown Manhattan, like in a
Park Sheridan Hotel, getting a hit, getting a shave.
That's a more popular high ritz, like ritzy place than Sparks Steakhouse.
Just a touch, if anybody doesn't know, the Pershkovs did not kill Albert Anastasia. Those other guys. That's all misinformation out there. And maybe we'll talk about that one day. But I met one of the shooters. So he's since passed, but I met one of the shooters on that. So the Pershkovs did not kill Albert Anastasia. Neither did Joe Gallo.
A lot of people downplay how
Joe Colombo hit.
Joe Columbus Circle.
People there.
Yeah.
Well, people around 100,000 press, agents, Secret Service, foot cops. They killed him right in front. Somebody killed him. I don't know who killed him, but somebody killed him right in front of 100,000 people.
Yeah. At a civil rights event.
Yeah. And what was he talking about? Italian American Civil Rights League that everybody knew was mobbed up the whole country. Oh, well, I got to say New York and New Jersey. I can't say the whole country.
the commission case, that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I'm surprised that really isn't the thing that gets, if you took the top 10 most powerful administrators, mob administrators, meaning administration figures in the country, there were 8 out of those 10 were taken down. The heads of all 5 families. They got Paul Castellano, Fat Tony, Tony Ducks, Rusty Rastelli, Carmine Persico. That's the heads of the big 5 families.
Jerry Langella too was underboss.
Yeah, they took down 5 bosses and 3 underbosses. Took Neil Delacroce. Well, he ended up dying, but he was indicted also later on. Jerry Lang and Salvatore Santoro. So you took 3 underbosses and 5 bosses out of the 10 biggest positions in New York. That's a major, major hit. And I ain't even talking about some of the other indictments that happened with Buffalo. I think their consigliere got busted also in the commission case.
Oh, right, you're right. The guys in Buffalo were caught talking about the commission and talking about guys in New York.
Yeah. But all this stuff that we're discussing was before a lot of this stuff is before 1990 when John Gotti goes on trial. This was all pre.
Right.
Everything we just discussed is pre-John Gotti. These are major wounds hitting Cosa Nostra.
Publicly, and to the strength of the soldiers and bosses in there. Absolutely. So hopefully we could clear that up. We cleared some of that up. Again, I welcome all the comments to come in and critiques, of course. And maybe we could open some eyes to some people with this conversation.
Now, one of the other things that, yes, Gotti was caught on tape. And largely the big thing that they had him on was he admitted to ordering murders. That's about the most that they had, correct? Would you agree with that? For the most part.
That's about the most? That's all you need. I get you what you're saying, though.
That's all you need to take him down. But they didn't really have enough to take down to have the inner workings and to know a lot of, and I heard you talk about this before when you talked on, I heard an interview that you did with, I believe it was Gary Jenkins, and you kind of explained what the government actually needed from Sammy. As far as how Sammy kind of helped them, like John's words were enough for John. Sammy's contribution was connecting the dots.
That could be a whole nother segment for us, but I'll stay because I think that would be very interesting. And I don't want to break that down now.
Yeah.
I'd rather keep that as a separate thing than what we're talking about because we're getting into something else. But the thing about Sammy being needed to convict John Gotti convicted John Gotti. Forget all the other players, forget all the other info was on there. There's no way John could run away from his words on those tapes. There's nobody else that could be blamed. Listen to the tapes. Don't listen to me. Listen to the tapes. There's no way John Gotti could beat any case, walk away, here, I'm sorry, excuse me, here, take this and go home. We were a mistake. It's somebody else's fault, and we made a mistake. It's really not your voice, John. We know that. We know you didn't mean that. Come on, John. Go home. We're going to blame all this on Sammy. John convicted John. John knew that. The world knows it. If they want to just listen to those tapes, you'll hear it. Sammy was a huge part, a person who knew just about the intricacies of our family and other families and met with every boss in every family, just about. No, I'm going to say met with every boss in every family and had everything to do with a lot. Sammy was a very, very influential and powerful figure with a tremendous amount of knowledge. But it wasn't for John that they needed him.
And I'm going back a little bit further, but when you mentioned earlier about the captains and their family all coming down, if you went back at that time, a lot of the captains, where was the power in the family? Were the captains in the family? Do you recall them being concerned about the amount of scrutiny watching the Raven night or seeing black trucks parked outside and vans or I know no one probably said anything because you can't, the boss is the boss, but what were the captains and the family feeling at that time?
Well, of course I didn't take a poll,
but you hear things.
What they were already in those positions with Paul going to that club. I met just about every captain in Paul. I met just about every wise guy in our family. I don't know if I missed that too many people when I was hanging out there as a kid in the 70s and into the 80s. So they were out there. Again, absent press. You had a guy, Kenny McCabe. Relentless. He worked for the state, then he wanted to work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. He was hand in glove with the FBI at the end. The guy had every picture, every wise guy associate everywhere in every family. It was like there was 3 of him. He was around so much, this guy. So they were used to the FBI being around. It's just the way I think the amount of press that came around. Mary Murphy, Pablo Guzman, John Miller was like, you give him a social club card. Hey, come on in, John, have a cup of coffee. John invited people in, pressed into the club. Mary Murphy came in and had coffee. She's the one that's walking with Jackie. And where Jackie says, I love that man. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
It is.
My memory serves me. But, John was right. Oh, leave the door right. Let them all come in. He didn't care at that point because they were outside anyway. So right or wrong or indifferent, I'll welcome all of those comments. It wasn't me who did it. But going back to your question was, yes, there was people uncomfortable. People were uncomfortable. Everybody, including me. What was the thing I said before? Jack, this is lambs to slaughter. If I was thinking that, and I love John, and I idolized John at that time, and I was a loyalist to my boss. And I just want to say something. No matter who would have been my boss, that's the guy who's going to be loyal to forever. Because I had no aspirations to being the boss. I listen. I follow orders.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys, Neil Delacroce, people talk about him, about being a boss, absolutely would have been a tremendous boss anywhere. By one statement alone, convinced me what a man he was. No, not a man as a tough guy dying in the street, dying in a hospital bed or whatever, dying in jail. On his deathbed with those tapes that they had in there.
I heard those.
One segment really touched me and made tremendous respect because I didn't know the guy at all. I held on goodbye several times, not even a lot of times in my life, was when they were talking about killing Paul. He said, the boss is the boss. He could have easily said on his deathbed, he knew he was going to die. And if he didn't die there, he was going to die in prison. He had those cases. He could have easily said, unleash hell on that Sicilian pig.
It was beautiful. And you could hear the sincerity in his voice. He said, that's why he says that you guys don't understand Cosa Nostra. Cosa Nostra means that the boss is your boss. And he would,
yeah. And that's it. Again, if there was any resentment of him not being boss at any time, he could have mounted a charge against Paul and won. It would have been a sneak attack. It would have clipped 4 or 5 captains and some of the guys in between, and it would have been over. Could have done it. But that deathbed statement, that's how I take it to those guys, those 2 young guys. Look, you think that was the first conversation they talk about Paul doing something with Paul with Neil? He already told them that. They went to him on his deathbed, I think, and tried to say, "Come on, Paul, Neil, give us a little push." And he said no. He taught them the life right there, and everybody else that listens to that tape. That's a man. That's Cosa Nostra. He could, like I said, unleash hell.
And the interesting thing about that statement is Neil comes from, he had that sentiment, that belief in Cosa Nostra, that your boss is your boss. even though he watched all the bosses before him get killed. A lot of them, not Carlo, of course. He's the only one that didn't get killed, but he was around a lot of usurping of power.
Yeah, they well, didn't they try at one point to usurp Tommy Rava? They tried to they snuck Johnny Roberts, and they were going to start killing other people. They wanted to take over the family. They tried to kill Neil, didn't they? At one time, tried to kill Neil. He escaped. They killed Rava though. So, yeah, he knew the life. After hearing that tape of not knowing the man, I said, wow, that's what it's about. That is loyalty to a person that you don't even like, baby. You respect his position, maybe not the man. And he respected not killing the boss. Because if he would have wanted to, the way he spoke, he would have wanted the commission if he had any reason. He didn't have grounds to go to the commission against Paul.
Since we're on the topic, because I saw it in our comment section, someone asked about it. But the Anthony Quinn, who plays Neil in the Gotti film, HBO film, plays a stern Neil, and almost, but he has this, he has these very intricate scenes where they do remind you of things you read about Neil. And someone said in the comment section, they said, "Hey, Michael, what do you think about that Gotti film, the HBO version, as far as how Neil was portrayed, how Gotti was portrayed? Like, how accurate do you think that is?" So I'm just curious, then, what do you think about that?
Well, I seen it, but I really don't recall it too much, and that's the truth. But I think I like Anthony Quinn. As a matter of fact, he showed up at John's trial.
Yeah, I know.
I bought him a bottle of champagne when I ran into him later on. In a hotel. A good man and a great actor, and I think his portrayal is being steely and straight and rigid. I think he did a great job there. Again, I didn't know Neil personally at all, so but from what I see and what you heard, everybody respected him. I mean, I never, even all the Sicilians, I never heard anybody, and those guys cracked to me. Those guys told me things. Not one guy ever disparaged Neil in any way. Utmost respect for him. So going back to the movie, I really don't remember. Should have given me a little homework. I would have watched it.
Yeah.
But to regard to the person that commented, I really can't compare it. I don't know.
Wow. Well, interesting. So John Gotti didn't bring down the mob.
John Gotti and some other people.
Yeah. Shouldn't say bring down, but weakened. So
well, it's been weakening for a while with all those cases. Look at all the bosses that got taken off the street for the commission. Like you delineated them earlier. There was a progression going back to the 50s. This is when all these guys, well, they killed two bosses. Then they killed Mangano and his brother. They killed Albert. They tried to kill Castellano. Vito died in jail. Luciano died by make-believe heart attack. I think I don't go for the heart attack theory. I think they give him a Sicilian drink.
You think so?
Yeah, and it's expressed. I think they give him a little shot. They give him a little Sicilian drink.
I've heard that conspiracy.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because he was supposed to be writing books and all that, and I don't think they want books to come out. Yeah. But I'm a conspiracy theorist at times. So
yeah, me too. But guys, thank you. Our channel has been growing. A lot of feedback comes in. A lot of comments come in. I see so many. I wake up in the morning and I say, "Oh my God, 300 comments," and Michael responds to them all. So, thank you guys for the feedback. Though we try to engage with you guys. We try to respond back to everybody. Well, Michael takes that pressure of getting back to everybody, but please continue to support the channel. Tell your friends about it. The best support you can show us is just bring in a new person. If everybody that watches it just says, "Hey, check this out," that's support. Not money. Don't need a donation. We just need you to support the channel through watching it, subscribing to it, liking it, commenting, sharing it. That's how you show us support. So thank you. Michael, anything?
Yeah. Just I hope that we've answered some of the questions that are out there. Again, I'm open to answer some more questions, even if we have to do a short video down the road on this again. But that's my perspective on what happened. Again, this isn't me, raising the John Gotti flag. Now, my feelings about John, I try to keep it separate, as anybody else I'm going to be doing in the future that I speak about on Patreon. But he does not bear the burden of what everybody says he did in that apartment with dismantling or exposing the mob. It's a completely false narrative. But I'll welcome anything you have to say, and I'm looking forward to it. But I hope it clears it up for you.